Well, hello, my YouTube friends. So let's take a look at this Sean Foo video. I referenced him in my previous video. He's a smart guy, but he's based in Singapore and he has a decidedly foreign outlook. Now, for the first couple years that I followed him and watched his videos, I didn't really notice that. But lately, especially in the past month or two, his bias has become like more pronounced or more visible. I'm really noticing his bias, and I'm not assigning ill will to him, but he has a foreign bias, a foreign outlook. He's not from America, doesn't live in America, has no loyalty to America. I'm going to say he doesn't care about America, or he only cares about America as far as it helps other countries. And we'll see that play out as I look at this video. So we're going to dissect parts of this video, and let's see what he says right off the start.
The global devaluation race has begun. Now, there are many side effects of America's trade war that are starting to bubble up to the surface.
Okay, you heard that. So the global devaluation of other countries' currencies, and then America's trade war. Okay, America's trade war, or every other country's continuing trade war against America, right? Okay, this is his bias living in another country and looking at America from a decidedly foreign point of view. It's America's trade war. So let's see here. Let's play for a second.
Beyond just the direct tariffs on countries' central banks around the world, they are freaking out. Thanks to the
Okay, central banks are freaking out. All right, because there's a couple of reasons. So the reciprocal tariffs are on the way. The dollar is falling. America could be going into a recession. So that's a double whammy right there for other countries selling products in America. Here's a graph about the dollar dropping. So when the dollar drops, it somehow makes foreign goods more expensive in America. And so however that works, and then the country America going into a recession, so Americans have less extra money to buy these more expensive foreign goods. And then now a tariff, it's going to raise the price of foreign goods even further. So like a double whammy on other countries. Okay, so this bothers him in that regard. So let's see here. Let's go a little bit farther. I think, right, this might be a good spot.
This is not good because you have two giants squeezing you. China accounts for nearly 30% of global manufacturing value
And by you, he means foreign manufacturers.
added, hitting $4.7 trillion. Their quality is heading up while their prices are headed down, undercutting everyone else. And that's just from Chinese suppliers. The US is also going to hit the world with massive reciprocal tariffs.
Okay, right there, massive reciprocal tariffs. So he knows it, reciprocal, he acknowledges it, but he just glosses over it. It just, so you can't say he doesn't know or didn't mention it, but it's of no importance to him. Reciprocal, I mean, we're evening the playing field. We're, a reciprocating assembly goes up and down, it's in balance, right? Reciprocal carry laws, that we accept other states' concealed carry license and they accept ours. Same with driver's licenses. So reciprocal tariffs. So we're matching the tariffs that other countries have against America. And so he mentioned it, but he just lets it, he just glosses over it. Here's the Treasury Secretary.
I can tell you, so April 2nd is going to be a big day. We're going to roll out the reciprocal tariffs, and President Trump's created a...
Okay, so reciprocal tariffs. So let's see here. What's our next stop?
Tariff, and US consumers can't afford it. There are only two ways this can end. So global central banks have to make a decision.
Okay, so he's wrong. He's saying there's only two ways that this problem for other countries can end. The problem being a falling dollar, America in recession, and reciprocal tariffs, right? Those all hurt foreign manufacturers selling in America. So according to Sean Foo, there's only two ways he can end, but he's wrong, and I'll explain why. He's gonna tell us what those two ways are right now.
Here, either you do nothing and see your revenues collapse,
That's one.
or you take action.
That's
And the
two.
only thing they can do is to actively devalue their currencies against the dollar.
Okay, that's not the only thing they can do. There's a third thing they can do. So they can take no action, they can take action, but there's two ways they can do. They can devalue their currency against the dollar, and so that will make their products more competitive in America. But the third thing they can do, all these foreign countries that are panicking, they can cut their tariffs on American goods because our tariffs are reciprocal. If they take their tariffs down to zero, then I guess we won't add any new tariffs on theirs, or we'll take ours down to zero. So we're just matching everyone's tariffs. So according to Sean Foo, that's not an option. That's not even on the table. No, they can't lower their tariffs against America. That's not one of three ways. There's only two ways because that's not going to happen. We ain't that. Okay, so he's just ignoring that. But there's another thing, and that's it. They can lower their tariffs against us. Let's see here. Okay, so here he's talking about Switzerland, and he's breaking my heart because the Swiss, their economy is 3/4 export, and they're lowering their dollar value or their Swiss franc value against the dollar. Let's see what he says here.
Are still going up, and having inflation near zero is a big respite from the crazy high levels we had over the past few years.
Okay, so inflation is very low in Switzerland, and if it goes up right now, starting from very low, you have room to go up without inflicting too much pain. And you heard him. That's a big respite against the high inflation we had. Okay, so he ain't talking about America. He's talking about other countries. He's talking about Switzerland right now. His point of view is that of a Swiss citizen that we had. He's putting himself with Switzerland because they had low. He ain't talking about us, the low, Okay, so let's go. We're looking at, this will come up right now, watch.
The real reason why the SNB is weakening the currency is because of Trump's trade war and...
Okay, whose trade war? Trump's trade war or the trade war of all these foreign countries against America?
Or can very well collapse their export-driven economy. The country exports a ton of products to countries. And no, it isn't just luxury watches from Patek or Audemars Piguet. Switzerland's biggest trade surplus comes from chemicals and pharmaceuticals. The entire Swiss economy comes from exports to everyone else. This is very extreme. China's export dependence is only 20% of their GDP. Even Canada and Mexico are well below 40%. So Trump's trade war can very well collapse their...
Okay, there we go again. Trump's trade war, right? It's not every other country's tariffs against us. It's Trump's trade war. We're at 345. All right, so let's see here.
Hurt. But here's the problem. Just like the rest of the world, the Swiss, they're going to face big reciprocal tariffs coming. And in April...
Big reciprocal tariffs coming. Okay, lower your tariffs against American products. If we're already not selling in there, there's not going to be like a huge influx of foreign products. What are we selling to them anyway? Nothing. So, you take your tariffs off. Yeah, but it's Trump's trade war. Okay, let's see here. Sorry, I can't get past these commercials.
So their costs are in Swiss francs or maybe euros. They have to invoice in these currencies to maintain their own margins. In other words, Trump's trade war has screwed them.
Okay, whose trade war? Trump's trade war or every other country's trade war against America?
Dependent on exports. Now, Canada is one economy that's very likely to devalue their currency further to survive. Trump's trade war is biting down hard.
Okay, whose trade war? Like Canada doesn't have any tariffs against us? Canada isn't in a trade war against us? It's Trump's trade war, right? Not Canada.
At such a short notice. Now, when you devalue your local currency and you invoice in dollars, this helps your exporters fight against Trump's trade war. And it's important.
Okay, it helps your exporters. Whose trade war again? You see the bias of this guy?
Devalue your currency is to cut interest rates. So in response to the trade war, we could see many other countries.
Okay, the trade war. So at least he's kind of saying, like the war implies that two people are at war, right? Not just one. And he's talking about devaluing their currency. He's not talking about lowering their tariffs against America.
We are headed towards a serious storm. The Federal Reserve will be much better off cutting rates as US tariffs start to ease their way into the economy. Do the right thing. Tariffs are supposed to be inflationary. The only reason you are calling for cuts now is because you are trying to preempt a recession. You realize?
Okay, so he's talking to the president. The only reason you, Donald Trump, are calling for this is to preempt a recession. Yeah, he's doing what every other Donald is doing what every other country in the world is doing, looking out for their own interest. That's the America First agenda. Every other country has a China First agenda, a Switzerland First agenda. Every other country has their own interest at heart. But America is not allowed to do that. So he's like, Donald Trump's wrong because he's trying to protect his people, is trying to help avoid a recession. So that's what, yeah, so.
Session this year in 2025. And if this happens, it won't just be the US dollar falling. Major economies will be forced to devalue theirs as well, which means
they're not forced to devalue their currency. They can lower their tariffs. They choose to devalue their currency instead of lowering their tariffs against America, right? They're not forced to do it. Okay, let's look at this right here. Cyrus Jansen, I came across this one. You can see it's red right there. I watched part of it. So dollar collapse. Look at the thumbnail. Xi Jinping, or whatever his name is, he's laughing, right? Trump's hurting.
Want to quit your job and work from home? Try flicking this.
Because as you'll see, Sean Foo appears on this video, and let's hear what he says.
My family laughed when I said I'd quit my job.
if you look at China's perspective, why am I lending money to the US government to fund their activities, which is ultimately going to boomerang and contain my own economy? It just doesn't make sense at this point.
Right.
So that is the factor of the cold winter and hell if they're going to go back to US treasuries anytime soon. There's not much incentive. And if you look at China's perspective, why am I lending money to the US government to fund their activities, which is ultimately going to boomerang and contain my own economy? It just doesn't make sense at this point.
Right, because China has their own interest at heart. But America is not allowed to have our own interest at heart in the eyes of Sean Foo and in the eyes of communists within our own country that hate us, the Democrats, right, and every other. We're not allowed to have an America First agenda. We're not allowed to have our own interests at heart, but every other country is. All right, my friends, it's a long video. You folks have a good day.